I still remember the way the chandeliers shimmered above the marble dance floor. The night my parents decided to bury me with a sentence. A dead end. They didn't whisper it. They didn't soften it. They said it plainly like a fact everyone already knew. The wedding was held at the iconic The Plaza Hotel in New York City. Crystal glassware, white orchids flown in from Singapore, a string quartet playing near the fountain. My sister Amanda always did things big, but this was bigger than big. $250,000 worth of look how well we did as parents. She married Daniel Whitmore, from the Whitmores, as in Whitmore Investments. His family owned half the skyline and probably the other half too. Amanda looked like royalty in a custom gown designed by Vera Wang. My mother cried when Amanda walked down the aisle. My father stood straighter than I'd ever seen him. Their golden child. And then there was me. I wore a navy suit I bought on clearance. It fit well enough, but it didn't scream money. It didn't whisper status. It just existed. Kind of like me, according to them. The comparison game growing up, Amanda was the prodigy. Straight A's debate captain. Full ride to Columbia University. I was different. I liked building things, breaking them apart, coding late at night. I didn't care about law school or consulting firms. I dropped out of college at 19, not because I was lazy, but because I was obsessed. Obsessed with an idea. My parents called it a phase, then a mistake, then an embarrassment. You're throwing your life away on apps and internet fantasies, my father would say. Amanda interned at Goldman Sachs during her sophomore year. I interned nowhere. I was teaching myself how to build scalable back-end systems and sleeping for hours. A night in a tiny apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. By 24, Amanda had an engagement ring that cost more than my annual income. By 24, I had maxed out credit cards and a prototype. Guess which one my parents were proud of? The toast. The humiliation peaked during the reception. After the champagne tower and before the 5-tier cake, my father tapped his glass to make a toast. He spoke about legacy, hard work, family honor. And Amanda, he said warmly, has always known how to choose the right path. She understood opportunity and seized it. Polite applause. Then he laughed lightly. Unlike some people who chase dreams that lead nowhere. The room chuckled awkwardly. My mother placed a hand on his arm, but didn't stop him. We all have different strengths, he added. Some build real futures, others. He glanced directly at me. Experiment. There it was. Dead end. I felt heat crawl up my neck. A few relatives avoided eye contact. One cousin smirked. Amanda didn't say anything. She never did. I excused myself and walked out to the terrace overlooking Central Park. The city lights glittered in the distance. I stared at them and reminded myself why I started. Not for them. Never for them. The beginning they didn't see 2 years before that wedding. I had founded a startup called Luminate. It began as a tool to help small businesses automate customer engagement using AI-driven messaging systems. Not flashy, not sexy. Just useful. At first, no one cared. Investors ghosted me. My beta version crashed constantly. I ate ramen and skipped holidays. My parents stopped inviting me to certain gatherings because they were tired of explaining what I did. But something happened 6 months before Amanda's wedding. A mid-sized retail chain tested Luminate's system. Within 3 months, their revenue increased by 28%. That got attention. Real attention. Suddenly, venture capitalists who once ignored me were emailing at 2 a.m. One firm in particular, Sequoia Capital, requested a meeting. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept building. The deal 3 weeks after Amanda's wedding, I was sitting in a glass conference room in Menlo Park. Across from me were 5 partners and a stack of documents. They offered $8 million in Series A funding. $8 million in exchange for equity. Yes, but it valued my company at $32 million. I kept my face calm. Inside, I was shaking. I signed, not because of the money, because it meant I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a dead end, I was just early. The silence before the storm. For months, I didn't say anything to my family. Luminate expanded rapidly. We onboarded over 1,200 businesses in the first year post-funding. We hired engineers from top firms. We moved into a sleek office in Soho. Tech blogs started mentioning us. Then came the article. The 30 Under 30, Disrupting AI Automation. There I was, front page of Forbes Online. Smiling, successful, undeniable. My phone exploded. Old classmates. Distant relatives. And finally, my mother. I saw something online, she said carefully. Yeah, I replied. You didn't tell us. You didn't ask. Silence. The invitation. A year later, Luminate hit $50 million in annual recurring revenue. Then came acquisition talks. 3 companies approached us. One of them was Salesforce. They wanted to integrate Luminate's AI engine into their enterprise ecosystem. The negotiations lasted months. When the deal closed, the number attached to it didn't feel real. $210 million. I retained equity. I joined as VP of Product Innovation. And overnight, the kid who experimented became a headline. The reunion, my parents invited me to dinner. Not a holiday. Not a birthday. Just dinner. Their house hadn't changed. Same leather couches. Same family portraits. Amanda, in her graduation gown, front and center. They looked at me differently, carefully, like I was fragile glass or a winning lottery ticket. My father cleared his throat. We may have misjudged you. That was his version of an apology. My mother reached across the table. We worried about you. I know, I said. But worry sounds different than dismissal. Amanda arrived late. Designer handbag. Perfect smile. I guess you proved everyone wrong, she said lightly. I looked at her. No, I replied. I proved myself right. The real ending. 6 months after the acquisition, I funded a scholarship program for young developers who couldn't afford college but had talent. Because I was one of them. I also bought a penthouse overlooking the same park I stared at the night of Amanda's wedding. Central Park, full circle. One evening, my parents visited. They stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, speechless. This is incredible, my mother whispered. My father nodded slowly. We never imagined. I finished the sentence for him. That I'd end up here. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I wasn't angry anymore. Success has a strange way of quieting old wounds, not erasing them, but shrinking them. That night, as they left, my father paused at the door. "I'm proud of you," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. What they never understood, being called a dead end, hurts. Especially when it comes from the people who are supposed to believe in you first. But here's what I learned. A dead end isn't always the end of the road. Sometimes it's just a road other people are too afraid to take. At my sister's $250,000 wedding, I was the embarrassment in a clearance suit. 2 years later, I was negotiating 9-figure deals. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I needed applause. But because I refused to let someone else define my destination. They thought I was stuck. Turns out, I was just building my own exit. 6 months after the dinner, where my father carefully reshaped the word misjudged into something that almost sounded like pride, everything shifted. Again, success doesn't just change your bank account. It changes the room when you walk into it. I started getting invitations to speak, to invest, to mentor. Tech conferences. Private equity dinners. Innovation panels. One of them was hosted by Harvard Business School. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had dropped out of college. Now, I was speaking to MBA candidates about scaling AI infrastructure. Life has a twisted sense of humor. The call from Amanda was 11:47 p.m. when Amanda called. She never called late. Her voice wasn't polished this time. "Are you busy?" "Yes," I said honestly. "But I can talk." Silence. Breath. "Daniel's company is struggling." That got my attention. Daniel worked at Whitmore Investments, but recently he had launched his own venture-backed retail analytics firm. It had been all over LinkedIn press releases, interviews, carefully staged success. "What kind of struggling?" I asked. The projections were wrong. Investors are pulling out. The golden world was cracking. And I said. She hesitated. "They heard you built predictive engagement systems. Daniel thinks maybe there could be synergy." Synergy, that word people use when they need help but don't want to say it. The meeting, we met at a private conference room overlooking Manhattan. Glass walls, polished table, catered espresso. Daniel looked different without the wedding day glow. Less invincible. "We expanded too fast," he admitted. "Our churn rates spiked. Customer retention collapsed." I listened quietly, the same way people once listened to me when they thought my ideas were unrealistic. "And you think Luminate can fix that?" I asked. He nodded. "It could. It absolutely could. But here's the thing about power. You don't need to raise your voice to use it. You just need to understand you have it." "I'm willing to consult," I said. "But not as family." Amanda stiffened slightly. "Meaning?" she asked. "Meaning we treat this like any other company. Standard rates. Standard equity agreements." Daniel swallowed. They weren't used to negotiating with me. Not from this side of the table. Old wounds, new dynamics. That night, my mother called again. I heard you're helping your sister, she said cautiously. I'm doing business. That's generous. No, I replied calmly. It's strategic. She paused. You've changed. No, I said. You just didn't know me before. Silence, sometimes growth, feels like distance to the people who never bothered to understand you. The shift in power over the next 3 months. My team integrated a modified version of Luminate's AI engine into Daniel's company platform. Retention improved, investor confidence stabilized. They avoided collapse, and when the recovery numbers were released publicly, industry blogs credited Daniel's decisive leadership pivot. Of course they did. I didn't correct them. Not everything needs credit. Sometimes influence is quieter than applause. The gala year after Amanda's wedding, there was another event, a charity innovation gala, hosted by Forbes. Black tie cameras. Interviews this time. I wasn't the forgotten sibling in the corner. I was the keynote. As I stepped onto the stage, lights flashing, I saw my parents seated near the front. My father's posture was different. Now not towering, not superior, observing, listening. I spoke about risk, about being underestimated, about building when no one is clapping. And sometimes, I said into the microphone, the people who doubt you aren't villains. They're just afraid you'll fail in ways they don't understand. The room was silent. I wasn't talking to investors, I was talking to 2 people in the front row. After the applause, Amanda approached me. You didn't have to help us, she said quietly. I know. She studied me for a moment. Did it feel good? She asked. Proving everyone wrong. I thought about that, about the terrace at the Plaza Hotel, about the toast, about the word dead end echoing in my ears. It felt necessary, I said. She nodded slowly. For what it's worth, she added. I never thought you were a dead end. You just never said that, I replied gently. She didn't argue. The real twist 2 weeks later. I received an offer, a seat on the board of a global tech accelerator. The same accelerator that had once rejected my application 3 times. The chairman looked at me during the final interview and said, we need founders who understand resilience. Resilience. Funny word. It sounds noble, but most of the time, it just feels lonely. Where I truly ended up one evening, I drove back to my parents' neighborhood alone, not to show off, not to relive anything, just to sit in the car outside. The house where I was told my dreams were unrealistic. I realized something. If they had believed in me early on, I might not have worked as hard. If they had supported every risk, I might not have developed the edge that made me sharp. Pain isn't always poison. Sometimes it's fuel. The conversation that mattered a few months later. My father asked to walk with me in Central Park. No speeches, no audience. I grew up believing security was everything, he admitted. I thought you were gambling your future. I said. He almost smiled, but you were calculating odds. I didn't understand. Yes, he stopped walking. I'm trying to understand. Now, that was the closest he had ever come to humility, and strangely, it mattered more than the money. The ending they didn't expect at Amanda's $250,000 wedding. They saw me as the cautionary tale at the Forbes gala. They saw me as success, But that's not where I truly ended up. I ended up free. Free from needing their approval. Free from proving anything. Free from the weight of comparison. The biggest shift wasn't the valuation, it wasn't the penthouse, it wasn't the headlines, it was this. When my father introduced me at a small family gathering months later, he didn't mention money. He didn't mention acquisitions. He said, "This is my son. He builds things." And for the first time, that was enough.